For me and for so many gamers, Far Cry 3 was an oh shit moment. Far Cry 3 was one of the very first AAA games to nail a refined stealth action open world FPS experience. Slicing and dicing enemies or AK-47ing through a whole outpost was fun AF. Beyond the crisp gameplay was a surprisingly enthralling narrative. No, it's not War and Peace, but the story was held up by an iconic villain in Vaas, Montenegro. The game even went so far as to get a little meta, delivering a storytelling experience that only games can deliver when the protagonist, first world frat boy Jason Brody, begins enjoying the cathartic release of indulging in chaos more than saving his friends. It's a genuinely enthralling and surprising character evolution that shows that Ubisoft wasn't afraid to get a little freaky. I knew this game was gonna be a banger when I saw that every upgrade was visually conveyed by a new tatao on Jason's arm. That marriage of style and function let me know that we were dealing with a game made by a creative team at the top of their game. They had a vision and everything was coming together for the sake of that experience. Then Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon came out and well damn, is it the best DLC of all time? It's up there. You can tell that the Far Cry team were just having so much fun with this thing. They took the wackiness of the Far Cry formula, dialed it up to blood, and then added some 80s dragon factor, and voila, a DLC GOAT candidate. This game was so iconic that one of my classmates back in the days made a YouTube channel specifically for Blood Dragon Let's Plays. Were his vids boring as Skin Lizard? Yeah, but it's Blood Dragon, iconic. And then Ubisoft began licking their dirty little French lips. They went over to the Far Cry team studio, locked them in their development cages, threw away the keys, and told them, "You make Far Cry now." And so the Ubisoftification begins. 2014, and here comes Far Cry 4. I booted up, and you know what? I love the setting of Kyrat. Nepal is criminally unexplored in gaming, and it's such an interesting place. The intersection of China and India, Nepal and thus Kyrat is culturally and visually unique. In the very opening stages of the game, when I was driving around, pistol in one hand, wheel in the other, Bollywood jams rocking on the radio, I was very much feeling Far Cry 4. Things started getting a little silly when Ajay Gale immediately shifts from "I have to spread my mother's ashes" to "I'm a goddamn freedom fighter" in literally 2 seconds and with no real motive. If Far Cry 3 had every moving part working towards one goal, then Far Cry 4's moving parts remained underbaked and unexplored. The gameplay is the exact same as Far Cry 3. Far Cry 3 was most definitely a repetitive game, it's Ubisoft after all, but the novelty of the gameplay and overall experience was enough to push you through. You can't just do the same thing with no changes and expect it to stay fresh. The only impact the cultural aspects of Kyrat have on the actual gameplay of 4 is the karma system. When I have to kill a fellow member of the Golden Path in order to use a turret in a Far Cry game and then end up losing karma, you know something ain't right. I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure the Vedic texts don't say anything about killing an enemy lieutenant and then looting his body. The best parts of the game are when you get to take trips to Shangri-La, aka when the game realizes the potential of its setting. What a surprise. Far Cry 4 is not a bad game, but why couldn't they just give Kyrat the game it deserves? 2016, and here comes Primal. Listen man, Primal is what I would label a guilty pleasure. I love that someone in the Far Cry team had the boldness to push for a game set in 10,000 BC. You absolute mad lad. I love that this game isn't afraid to go ooga booga. Come on man, that's absolute jokes. But don't forget that Ubisoft is involved. Why? Why would you go to the effort of making a game set in 10,000 BC, of making up a whole entire language with several dialects, of designing truly unique caveman cultures and outfits, of making cavemen sexy, just to carbon copy the same old BS? Why? The melee combat is so underbaked and the bow and arrow gameplay kinda devolves into traditional FPS fare. And what do you know, every caveman tribe so conveniently structures themselves in a nice clean number of well-defined outposts. Why? They even literally copy and pasted the map from Far Cry 4. The director tried to hint that it was an intentional tie-in, a Far Cry universe type of moment, except for the fact that Primal is set in Europe and Kyrat is in Asia. Unless Ubisoft knows something about prehistoric Earth that we don't.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
Nothing sums up Ubisoft more than how the game places an emphasis on a tribal connection to nature and wildlife, only for you to then have to kill 9,000 saber-toothed tigers to increase your bag size. So tribal. Now we reach Far Cry 5, the supposed savior of the franchise. Let me say this, Far Cry 5 is a fun-ass game. Sometimes. When I heard that this game was set in Montana, I gave it the old
Montana.
When you start the game though, holy moly, the opening is incredible, truly spine-tingling. Was I being a judgmental city boy? Maybe the American countryside is the perfect place to set a chaotic open world game. But then once things settle down, once I stopped with the fake thanks though, I realized the issue was once again Ubisoft. The setup to this game is truly intriguing, centering around the radicalization of a population that has been so ignored by media, by the government, by the world really. Just as with Kyrat though, the setting isn't incorporated into the gameplay. We're talking about cults here. Surely you could have had more fun with this theme gameplay wise. Even AC Odyssey, a Ubisoft game to the 9000, employed cultish radicalization into its actual gameplay. What if random townspeople surprise attacked you, or there was a mechanic like praise, anything could be an enemy? Like I said, the game is fun because Far Cry is fun, but once again they just had to pump it with padded out, straight up boring side quests. A lot has been made about how the game finally got rid of towers and employed a more Breath of the Wild, explore everywhere formula. But guess what? Breath of the Wild has goddamn towers. It's almost like it wasn't the towers that were the problem, but the fundamental structure of the side missions. You don't get to not fix the problem and make some sarky joke about it, Ubisoft. This is classic I did the job boss material. A big deal was made of removing the skinning animations, but now they also got rid of the grind of having to get 2 million animal skins just to increase the size of your wallet. The removal of the grind is definitely a plus, but now killing an animal and collecting their skin has absolutely no flavor. It's almost like having a skinning animation was never the problem in the first place, but the stupid grind was the problem. Another feature they removed is having an actual protagonist. Oh, of course, having someone who actually has personal stakes in the story isn't as important as being able to buy a Rabbids t-shirt from the Uplay store. It's almost like they compromised the Far Cry formula for the sake of monetization. As much as Far Cry 3's DLC showed how the development team was at the top of its game, Far Cry 5's DLC shows how tired and uninspired the development team now is. Lost on Mars is clearly a wannabe Blood Dragon, and oh my god, it's so boring. They went full 180 and said the game is now all towers. It tries to be quirky and funny, but it goes full Borderlands 3 and just tries too damn hard. If I presented all of these games, 3 and beyond, and I took away the titles, would you truly be able to tell which goes in what order? Okay, there are graphical improvements, but the fundamental gameplay and structure has remained at a standstill. Systemic games that let you approach encounters in multiple ways should benefit from improvements in technology more so than other genres. Just look at the leap from MGS4 to MGS5. Maybe it's unfair to compare Far Cry to MGS5, a systemic open world game that is somehow still light years ahead of all current open world stealth action games. But Far Cry 5 clearly has tried to emulate MGS5's use of companions in its Heroes for Hire system. Listen, I love Cheeseburger, but come on, this system is so half-baked. The companions don't really add anything to the sandbox. There's been no improvement in physics, no significant additions to the actual sandbox, no different ways to cry. What do a random tropical island, Kyrat, 10,000 BC Europe, and Montana have in common? They all have conveniently placed beehives and caged animals. And guess what? Outposts. This is the point of the video when we go all the way back to Far Cry 2. Oh lordy, this game is relentless. You want to talk about intense openings? In the beginning of Far Cry 2, you catch malaria. You have to deal with malaria throughout the whole damn game. You know how Far Cry 5 got rid of all those flavorful animations and details? Far Cry 2 is all about the details. You jig bullets from out of your body. You grab guns from your safe house. The only in-game maps you have are literal maps. You might say, oh, Far Cry 2 has a buddy system like the Heroes for Hire and Far Cry 5. Oh yeah? Well, if your buddy goes down on Far Cry 2, you can abandon them to die on their own, or get out your gun and finish them off yourself. Near smile? Far Cry. Far Cry 2 tells you, screams at you, that Africa doesn't give a shit about you. Every landscape is endless and oppressively powerful. Guns constantly jam and explode in your hands. If you don't get killed by a stray bullet, you get malaria. Getting around the map isn't la-di-da-di-da. It's hellish. Every 2 meters another bandit troop will start chasing you down and your car will break down after 5 bullets to the carburetor. And you want to talk about systemic action? Destruction. Physics. Fire. Fire in this game is on some Prometheus wave levels, man. In the blink of an eye, a cheeky Charmander flame will grow into Charizard blast burn proportions and cinder your malariated ass. There are no good guys in this game, just 2 factions with their own motives and a guy you need to kill called the Jackal. You are literally just a mercenary, a gun for hire. Yes, the game is janky and the oppressive mechanics are tedious and not exactly fun. And yes, there is the patented Far Cry repetition. This game is not for everyone. But gosh darn it, the developers had a vision. Far Cry 2 and Far Cry 3 exist on 2 sides of the same coin. Both are about being consumed by chaos, about the descent. Far Cry 2 is about being consumed by the world around you, about being powerless to its ambivalent destruction, while Far Cry 3 is about being consumed by your own power, by your ability to destroy the world. These two tell you that the Far Cry formula isn't about generic outpost clearings and repetitive, tedious, boring checklist gameplay. It's about chaos. Just when you have a little hope for the series, they had to hit you with Far Cry New Dawn. No lordy. This time, they didn't even try to hide the fact that they were just copying the map. They just straight up told you. Of course, they added a tacked on RPG mechanic, restricting your freedom in a game that's literally all about freedom. It's almost like they compromised the Far Cry formula for the sake of monetization. The main villains are boring too. And bear in mind, this wasn't just a cheap DLC. It's a 40 quid standalone game. Blood and Wine is 16 quid and it has a completely new map and is actually good. It's a new dawn for how much Ubisoft tries to con the customer. Let's talk about Assassin's Creed 3 real quick. My family does not celebrate Christmas. I have never received a Christmas gift except for Assassin's Creed 3. I was so hyped for this game. I was a massive AC fan at the time, but the Ezio trilogy was just beginning to wear thin. I thought this would be the game to change everything. When I finally played it, I was so disappointed. Looking back, I can understand that the main issues were its pacing and weak characters. To this day, I find the game disjointed and disappointing, but I'm not angry. The game was crazy ambitious. You can tell that the developers wanted to make a massive American Odyssey, but they made creative mistakes. Genuine creative mistakes that can happen when you're trying to make something great. I'm disappointed at the game, but I'm not angry. The newer Far Cry games make fewer mistakes than AC3, but they make me angrier because they are so throttled by corporatization. Why, Ubisoft? Why? In a series that has the freedom to do anything, why do you make everything so routine, so pedestrian? Why do you not care? Clearly some people care because there are so many ideas with so much potential. Every actor who lands the lead villain role seems to have an absolute blast. So why do you then deliberately throttle your development team? None of the games are terrible. All of them have fun in them, and I do hope that Far Cry 6 is good, but the writing is on the wall. Insanity it is.
That is crazy.